Have you ever heard someone say, you have your views and I have my views, but neither one is more or less correct? This idea is becoming more and more common, and it is one of the most dangerous threats to our democracy. I'd like to talk to you about what this idea is, why it's dangerous, and how you can recognize it in your discussions. Mainstream thought has a lot of names for this idea, such as multiculturalism, ethical diversity, being non-judgmental, cross-culturalism, etc. For the purposes of this video, I will be labeling this belief ethical relativism because the name describes the belief itself, which is that morality is relative to who you are or where you grew up. Most people think this is a kind, respectful, and compassionate stance to take. And at first glance, it does seem to embody open-mindedness and to be a step in the right direction for our society. However, this hands-off approach towards ethics is precisely what's degrading our progress. So what is ethical relativism? This is the belief that universally applicable ethical standards don't exist. The fact that there are no universally accepted standards is true. People are constantly disagreeing about what's right and wrong, and most people and cultures disagree about how we should interpret ethical laws. However, relativists take it a step further because they believe that the problem isn't merely that we don't understand what the ethical laws are, but rather that there are no ethical laws altogether. To give you an example, we can liken this to our scientific knowledge that the Earth is round. Most people believe there's an objective truth to this. Either the Earth is round, or it's flat, or it's some other shape, but at the end of the day, the Earth has a concrete shape, whether you believe it or not, whether we understand it or not, and whether you know it or not. The relativist stance on morality would be like saying the Earth doesn't have an objective shape. They would claim there's no real shape of the Earth. Instead, the shape of the Earth changes for every person who lives on it. They might say that the shape of the Earth is open to interpretation. This would mean that the Earth would have to be all suggested possibilities at once, which is the same as saying it's none of the possibilities. Without having a defined shape, the Earth wouldn't exist. I'm a bit worried that concept is too abstract, so I'll explain it another way. I love thinking about the way that digital worlds overlap with our current reality. In creating a digital world for a video game, how do you start? Typically there's a blank page, there's a gray screen which suggests the dimensions of the world, whether it's going to be 2D or 3D, that sort of thing. When you're creating an object to place in this world, you have to define it somehow. The more defined the object, the more realistic it looks, and the better the object functions. If that object is not defined, it doesn't exist. You're simply staring at a gray screen, a blank world. In order for an object to exist, it must be defined. As soon as you code a short definition for the object, it exists. It has been brought into being. In order for the digital world to exist, it too must be defined. Is the digital world 2D or 3D? How large is the space we're able to explore? How does the world function? What are the physics? Nothing can exist if it's not defined in some way. I want to be clear that the required definition is separate from whether or not there's human knowledge of that definition. The definition I'm talking about is a definition within the universe, or our current reality. A video game item doesn't have to be aware of its own definition in order to exist. The system itself keeps track of that without the software needing to be aware of it. Our current reality is the same way. Items, people, the universe itself must be defined in some way in order for them to exist. Not having a definition is the same as non-existence. I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, what does this have to do with ethics? Well, the issue is, in order for ethics to exist, it too must have a definition independent of human knowledge. Since ethical relativism believes that ethics is all suggested possibilities at once, it must mean that morality and ethics don't exist. In other words, belief in ethical relativism is the same as belief in the non-existence of morality. The idea of ethical relativism is the antithesis of the idea of morality itself. To explore this further, we'll need to examine the two forms of ethical relativism: individual relativism and cultural or societal relativism. Individual relativism is the belief that morality is relative to the individual, or in other words, that individual beliefs and experience are what create an individual's morality. Within this belief, no individual's morality is better or worse than another individual's morality. Because no morality exists outside of what individuals themselves agree to, no particular act can be said to be right or wrong. Everyone would have the opportunity to say that what they're doing is right, and as long as they really believed it, it would be true. This means if I say I believe it's fine to murder people as long as it's only on Mondays, a relativist would only be able to say, you have your morality and I have mine, and neither one is less or more correct. So basically they would have no ethical backing to be able to stop me. The only backing they would have is their own personal desire and strength. The relativist would have to allow me to do as I wished, especially if I'm stronger, because in their view, it simply boils down to what you can get away with in order to boost your own pleasure and avoid your own pain. Under this banner, all atrocities committed by single actors are justified as simply being logical or illogical solutions to that individual's problems. Mass shootings, rape, murder, all of the most despicable and heinous acts that a person could commit are neither righteous nor unrighteous. Plato accurately imagined the world through the eyes of a relativist in an excerpt commonly called the Ring of Gyges. In this passage, a character, Glaucon, clearly describes the world as ethical relativism sees it. Glaucon says that if a good person and a bad person both had a ring that would make them invisible, there would be no reason for a good person to continue being good. Both the good person and the bad person would revert to their basic nature, which is to be selfish and evil. He says that morality is simply a compromise between the best of all outcomes, which is to do evil without being punished, and the worst of all outcomes, which is to experience evil without being able to retaliate. So men, having both done evil and experienced evil being done to them, created laws, and that's how morality was created. Glaucon goes on to say that if this was the case, good people would only be good because someone else is essentially forcing them to be good. Otherwise, it would be better for man if he could do and take whatever he wants. This boils being a good person down to a simple risk versus reward scenario, in which good people are only good because there's someone stronger forcing them to be good. And the people who are the strongest then have the right to do whatever they want to other people because they have the power to do that. In this view, morality is not considered a good thing. It's just tolerated as the lesser evil. The original argument is way better than my paraphrase, so if you're interested, I recommend reading the full transcript at the link below. It's fairly short. Regardless, this passage shows the world through the lens of a relativist. This is what the world would look like if we truly followed this belief. We would be subject merely to the whims of individuals who can force others to do as they please. We would have no moral justification to oppose any ill treatment. A large portion of Plato's book, The Republic, is the story of Socrates and others adamantly arguing against this view. The second form of relativism is that of societal or cultural relativism. This form suggests that morality is created not by the individual, but by society at large. These societal decisions could be a result of majority rule or authoritarian government rule. A societal relativist might say, when in Rome, it's ethical to do as the Romans do. The pitfalls of this belief are very similar to individual relativism. Because no objective right and wrong exists, no particular war can be said to be just or unjust. No particular mode of culture can be said to be humane or inhumane. Under this banner, the actions of Hitler and Nazi Germany in World War II cannot be considered just or unjust. Same with today's North Korea. Genocide carried out by any nation or collective would simply be logical or illogical. I'd like you to consider this. What percentage of society has to agree before something can be considered moral or immoral? How large would the society have to be? Is 2 people enough, or would there need to be others? How many more would be needed? I'm sure we can all agree that the actions of Nazi Germany were extremely immoral. Did they have enough people to constitute a society? If we consider these questions, we can see that societies are made up of individuals. And this allows us to see that societal relativism breaks back down into individual relativism, which in turn breaks down to morality being simply the desire of the stronger. Okay, so I think at this point we can see that ethical relativism is obviously bad. This is not a belief which fosters progress, kindness, or respect at any level. So what's the alternative? The alternative is ethical absolutism or objectivism. This is the belief that there is a universally applicable law of morality, a law which we may not understand, but to which every human is held responsible. The entire philosophical branch of study called ethics is devoted to understanding the rules which govern these laws. Since that branch of study is such a large topic, I'm not going to be able to cover all of the proposed laws in this video. People have been debating which laws are right and wrong since the beginning of humanity. I would like to caution you, however, if you don't actually believe in ethical relativism, please don't use it as a way to be lazy in conversation. We all have those days when we don't want to talk about a particular topic. We're tired, we've been circling this idea for a long time, and nothing feels like it's being done. I understand the desire to shirk from confrontation. Instead of using a relativist argument like you have your morals, I have mine, and neither one's right and wrong, just say that you don't know enough about the situation to make a judgment. That allows you to escape the conversation without offending anyone and without espousing this completely false belief that everyone has opinions and none of them are better or worse than anyone else's. If you're worried about judging people, realize that you can think someone has a dumb idea without hating the person themselves. This is the attitude we should strive to have in our conversations. Love for the individual, but earnest pursuit of the truth. Love the thinker, hate the thought. As we've shown here, ethical relativism, being the antithesis of morality, is one of the greatest threats to a smooth functioning society. If we move away from relativism and towards open and honest communication, our societies and our people will prosper. Despite belief in ethics being condemned as judgment and cruel, ethics is the only way that we can have a peaceful society. All societies are built on trust, and without being able to trust our fellow neighbors to do the right thing, without even knowing what the right thing is, there's no way we can work together and foster the kind of trust that's needed to continue in prosperity. Our laws and societies at large are currently built on the idea that ethics is true. I hope that together we can keep it that way and stop the degradation of morality by becoming curious about what it truly means to be moral. I'm sure you have more questions. I hope to do a couple of videos soon about the origin of moral grays in light of absolutism, the rationality of relativism versus absolutism, and other deep topics about how we can turn the tide of modern thought into something that actually parallels reality. If you're interested in these type of videos, please hit the subscribe button to learn more and hit that notification bell to get updates when I post new videos. I love you all. See you next time.